Today I'm going to show you how to make real 24 karat gold dice, at least suspended in resin, and this process will work for pretty much any dice. So sit back, relax while I show you how to make some quality. Is that a freaking 1 on my first roll? These dice suck! This mold making process is going to be very similar to the ones we've done before, except we're using a different type of silicone mold. We're using slow 15. This makes a little bit harder of a mold and a little bit more durable of one, so you can be rough with it and it's just a little bit more forgiving. We're going to do the same technique that we've done before, and I just want to go over this process again in a little bit clearer picture and show you some new steps that I've found that make it a little bit easier. So we're going to take 2 sets of dice, one full set of 7 RPG dice and one set of small D6 ones. We're going to hot glue the D6 ones to the RPG dice. Now, when I say hot glue these, use a tiny amount of glue. Zooming in here, you can see how little it is. We really want there to be not a lot at all so that it's easy to clip off later. A lot of people have said they've had problems trying to do this. I think it might be that you're using too much hot glue, because when you make a mold of this, that's going to all turn into resin, and that's really hard to cut through. Now, the purpose of gluing 2 of these together is the small D6s are going to act like a funnel. You could really use anything you want, anything that you don't really care about, like a marble or something. We're going to glue these to the bottom of some disposable cups, which will actually be the top of our molds, because no silicone will be able to get to where we're gluing it. So you can see there's a lot of empty space there. Now, I'm going to glue a bunch of these down so that they're all in those cups, and now we need to make the silicone that will go around these to actually make the mold. Again, we're using slow 15. It just makes a harder mold and I like it better. You can still use the other one. This one just makes the mold a little bit more reusable. I fill up 3 of these small disposable cups and fill them into a larger mixing cup. Because we're going to turn this into silicone, I'm not worried about using my silverware on this. It will peel right off of your cups and or your silicone. So 3 cups of one part and 3 cups of the other part. I can't just weigh these out because it's by volume. A lot of people ask that. The way these are done is by volume. So you need to make sure that you put 3 equal volume parts of this stuff and mix this. And when I say mix this, mix it until your arms are sore. It has to be one even color. A lot of people have problems with their mold having failures. It's because you didn't mix it enough 99% of the time. Pouring the silicone is actually just as important as mixing. The way you pour can induce bubble into your molds. I try and pour to the edge of it so that it can fill up like rising water in a bath. You try and pour it on top, you're just asking for bubbles to happen. So I'm going to zoom in here so you can see a little better about what I'm talking about. If you pour on one side, it tends to pool up from the bottom rather than from the top down, where air can't escape. So try and do it to one side, and that should help remove any bubbles if you are experiencing that specific problem. Go ahead and fill up the rest of them and try and tap any air out that you can by just smacking it on the table. Now we get to my favorite part, which is dealing with real gold. I got these little jars of 24 karat gold that's really thin when we went up to the mountain on vacation recently, and this is as much as what comes out of one single jar, so I struggled to get it all out of there, and I have quite a few jars full of this stuff, and I thought that was going to be enough, but that is not enough gold. That's not enough gold to even fill one dice that I want, so I ordered some extra of that 24 karat edible gold on Amazon. I figured I could use this for multiple purposes, so it was pretty cheap. I got enough to where I could just take it and rip it apart. It's super thin, so that works for pouring the resin. It works for everything that I want it to. So I just grabbed some extra sheets of this. It was like $10 for this box, and it says it's 24 karat gold. You can see it blow just from my breath. I assume it's thin enough that it is actual gold. I could be very wrong here. I'm very aware of that, but it is super pretty, and I was told it's 24 karat gold, so I am telling you that it's 24 karat gold, baby. Now, I don't know what happened to the footage of me cutting the dice open, but you know what? That's okay, I can do a dramatization. So with this dramatization, I take a knife, I cut around the silicone, and bam, out pops the dice. That was a big money dramatization right there. I spent all the money on gold, you can't blame me for it. Either way, you can check out the shotgun dice video if you want to see how I do it, but I just take an X-Acto knife and run it around the edge of the mold. From that, the dice pops right out. Now, I use tape now instead of rubber band to kind of cinch these things up, and I pinch the edges so it's as tight as it can be. Rubber bands seem to deform my molds, and I didn't like that. that. Back to working with the gold, we're going to use the same resin that we used last time, which is Art and Glow resin. It doesn't actually glow, that's just the name of it. I let it sit in an extremely hot sink water bath so that the resin becomes extremely flowy and falls into the molds a lot easier. It's actually pretty thick stuff, so if it doesn't pour out like water like this, I would really recommend you going and letting it sit in a hot water bath. It just makes the whole process easier. It falls into the molds cracks so much better. Doing this again is another mix it till your arm falls off kind of day that you have to do, same way with the silicone. Now I go ahead and pour it in with the gold, and there's so little gold because it's very thin, this actually won't weigh your dice down, so it's gonna be a pretty well balanced dice. At least it was when I tested it at the end. Mix this up for a good minute or so. We want to make sure that there's no piece of gold without any resin on it, and now we can begin filling the molds. If you have a long disposable squeeze bottle, this is really great and an easy way to fill these things up. I use these little pipettes, and now I've found an even better way to use them in my opinion. I fill the top little funnel part, and if your resin flows right in there, great. The gold kind of prevented it from doing that in mine. I fill the top funnel part, and then I actually suck the air out of the mold with my little pipette. It creates this kind of suction effect where it pulls the resin down into the mold while at the same time taking the air out of the mold. So I get less failures in my dice because I'm pulling the air out of them. And by the time that it fills all the way up to the top and no more resin goes down, I know that I've got a pretty good set of dice. And you can see when I open this one up here, this is a pretty good D6. There's not a lot of air bubbles in this, so I was really happy with how these turned out. I like this mold, and now we're going to kind of show you how to do a bit of the cleanup. But before we do the cleanup, you can see that this is a perfectly reusable mold. I'll probably do this on the next few sets that I make. I use a set of really sharp flat bottom model shears. I use them for my miniatures. They're designed to cut plastic. They work great here. I lay the flat part right up against the dies and cut tiny bits out of where it's connected. This will give me a perfectly angled edge to the dice, which is fantastic. Don't force it. Take off little bits at a time, or else you're going to cut parts that you don't want to. Now you can hand sand it. I have a Dremel, so I'm going to use the Dremel. Any bits that are sticking out like this, either with a hand sander or your shears if you're confident in it, go ahead and just sand it down until you get some smooth surface that looks just like the other edges of the dice. Now you're going to get some rough parts on there, but that's okay. There's a really easy way to fix this without having to go get plastic polish and having to spend a ton of time making it super shiny. If you're a little embarrassed by this, you're gonna have to get over it because this is $1 at the dollar store and it's essentially resin. This is top base coat for nail polish. I was going through the dollar store and I saw this and I thought, man, that would be an easy solution for this. So as you take this out, just kind of wipe the nail polish off so you're using just a extremely small amount and it will fill in those resin gaps for you. It's completely clear and it lasts just as long as regular resin because that's essentially what it is. And you can see as I'm applying it to this D6 here, it just disappears. Once it dries, you've got your dice ready to go and you didn't have to spend hours or minutes really polishing. I decided to go with white for the numbers because it didn't detract from the gold and it also kind of stood out against the gold. To do this, you just completely fill in where the numbers are with paint. Overfill it, don't use too little or else it won't look right. Overfill it with paint and then wipe it off with a paper towel. You can also use your thumb to get any excess off and you have a completely filled number. It's not complicated. You don't have to be an amazing artist. I took the rest of them, filled them in, and bam, we've got our completed set of 24 karat gold dice. This is by far my favorite set of dice that I've made. I love how because the gold is so light, it actually floats in the resin and doesn't all sink to the bottom. So the whole thing is filled with gold. It just looks so pretty. I love the D12. The numbers are so big on it. They just pop on all angles. Really, really happy with how these came out. I'm sorry I've had a bit of a content drought. Sometimes life just comes at you fast and you just got to deal with stuff. But I've noticed that we're so close to 2,500 subscribers. That's amazing. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this or share this with somebody that you might want to make dice with or for in the future. It really helps me out. And again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have just an amazing day.